Welcome back to the Willadelphia show. Let's get right into it. The 2025 Eagles preseason is in the books. I give my biggest takeaways as week one approaches. An update on Zach Wheeler. What's the status of the Phillies ace? And we look ahead to a very big Phillies offseason. What should their plan be for their impending free agents? We cover all that and more on today's show. Welcome in, everybody, and thank you for joining me on another edition of the Willadelphia podcast. My name's Will Barbera, as per usual, and let's just get into it, man. The Philadelphia Eagles defeated the New York Jets by a score of 19-17 in their third and final preseason game of the 2025 season. I should say that Jake Elliott beat the New York Jets by that score, as Elliott scored 13 of the Eagles' 19 points on the day, going 4 for 4 on field goal attempts and 1 for 1 on extra point tries. His longest field goal of the day was a 53-yarder. The Eagles finished the preseason with a 2-1 record. And now that the preseason is over, we are less than 12 days away from making every single miserable Dallas Cowboy fan we know watch as we raise a championship banner, and then we're going to hold their eyes open while we beat the crap out of them on national television to start the season. With that being said, here are my big takeaways for the entirety of Eagles preseason as week one approaches. My first takeaway from the 2025 preseason is that Tanner McKee is legit. I think that he's really talented, and I am totally and 100% comfortable with him being the backup quarterback and relieving Jalen Hurts whenever Jalen Hurts needs to be relieved. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Will, that feels like a pretty crazy overreaction to have about a guy that's played one half of preseason football to this point in the season. If that is the thought that's going through your head right now, I think you're downplaying everything we've seen from this kid since the start of last season. Last year, we watched him play really well in 2 end-of-season games while Jalen Hurts was out. In a 41-7 blowout win over Dallas, he went 3 of 4 with 54 passing yards and 2 touchdowns after taking over for an injured Kenny Pickett in the second half. Then, in Week 17 of last season, when the Eagles were resting their starters for the playoffs, he went 27 of 41 with 252 passing yards and 2 touchdowns against the New York Giants. And then we win the Super Bowl, right? And we forget about Tanner McKee because nobody's thinking about the backup quarterback for a Super Bowl winning team, especially he was technically the third string. Nobody was thinking about Kenny Pickett. Nobody was thinking about Tanner McKee. Then week one of the preseason rolls around. Against the Bengals, he goes 20 of 25, 252 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 passing and 1 rushing in what was basically the first half of the game against Cincinnati. And if you didn't watch the game or any of the preseason, you might be thinking to yourself, just because the guy can dice up the Bengals' second-string defense, we should be excited. What the hell are you talking about, Will? Listen, I know the Cincinnati Bengals aren't exactly the 85 Bears on the defensive side of the ball, but they did play their starters for the first 4 drives of the game, all right? And do you want to know what happened on those 4 drives of the game when Tanner McKee was leading the Eagles' offense? You know what happened? Touchdown, field goal, punt, touchdown. He looks tough. He looks poised. He looks accurate. I mean, what more does the guy have to do to prove to you that he's ready for this spot? And don't get me wrong, I would have liked to have seen him on the field more throughout the preseason. He's a young, inexperienced quarterback. Those type of players need reps in order to get better, even if he is really talented. And I saw a lot of people online that were saying the same thing as I am, that they're upset with Sirianni's decision to sit him. But this morning, got a little bit of context. It was announced that he has been dealing with a finger injury over the past few weeks. It doesn't sound like it's anything that's going to keep him out for too long. It doesn't sound like it's anything that's going to put him on the IL or the PUP list to start the season. But what it will do is affect his progress. Like I said, a young, inexperienced quarterback who is as talented as he is going to need reps. And a quarterback like him who's a backup isn't going to get reps that are meaningful anyway in the regular season unless Jalen Hurts is injured. So you need those reps in the preseason, and it sucks that we only got to see a handful of them for him. I'm not saying that we have a quarterback controversy. Please don't construe my words. But I feel comfortable with Tanner McKee as the Eagles' backup, and I think that you should too. My second takeaway of the 2025 preseason has to do with the 2 quarterbacks who are battling out for the third-string spot throughout the preseason. Hey, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Kyle McCord. You guys are not it, dude. Like, I legitimately have. There are a few times I've seen worse quarterback play in my entire life than what these two guys have put together throughout the 3 games that this preseason has happened. And I understand that you guys might be thinking to yourself, Will, most third string quarterbacks in the NFL aren't capable of winning any team a Super Bowl by themselves. I understand that. But they just flat out have to be better than the numbers that DTR and McCord have put up this preseason. I don't care who it is. They just got to be better than what they've done throughout these past 3 games. Here's what they've done, okay? Dorian Thompson-Robinson, throughout 3 games, 10 of 16 with 73 passing yards, no touchdowns and interception across 3 games. Kyle McCord, on the other hand, he's been lighting the world on fire compared to that. 24 of 56 with 191 passing yards, a touchdown, and an interception across 3 games. That's unacceptable. I get that Thompson Robinson is a career backup. I get that McCord is a rookie who's still getting his bearings in the NFL. These numbers are unacceptable. I don't care what the excuse you have for them is. One word, unacceptable. And I mean, like straight up, let's be honest about this, okay? If there's somebody who's got a gun to your head and they put those 2 quarterback stat lines in front of you and said you have to choose or I'm going to kill you. I don't know about you guys. Pull the trigger. I don't want nothing to do with either one of those stat lines. Not a single thing. Howie Roseman and the Eagles have prided themselves over the years on being a quarterback factory, right? You want to be a quarterback factory, Howie? Sure. Go right ahead. Produce at least one option for the third string quarterback spot that's better than these 2 jabronis, all right? And Howie must have been listening because he went and did just that. This morning, the Eagles acquired quarterback Sam Howell and a 6th-round pick from the Minnesota Vikings in exchange for a 5th-round pick next year and a 7th-round pick in 2027. This is a guy who once threw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns against the Eagles while he was starting for the Commanders. If the Eagles are serious about repeating, then they need to be prepared for anything. And whether you like it or not, that includes having a third-string quarterback who can at least run an offense without filling their diaper up. Hopefully, Howell can do that better than either DTR or McCord would have been able to. My last takeaway for the 2025 preseason is that I am now concerned about the Eagles' secondary. More specifically, I'm concerned about the second outside cornerback spot opposite of Quinyon Mitchell. For all training camp, it's been Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson competing for the job. And the fact that we are now done with the preseason and training camp, and we have no idea who has the upper hand in that battle, really irks me. It worries me quite a bit. At the beginning of camp, it seemed like Ringo had the upper hand. Then Jackson started to get more playing time. And then at the end of camp now, we had Ringo get moved from first string all the way down to third string. We had Cooper DeJean getting outside cornerback reps. And we had Adoree Jackson move inside and start getting reps in the slot. Don't get me wrong. I love and appreciate and trust Vic Fangio. He just won us a Super Bowl. I truly do trust him to get the guys ready and to make the right decisions about who's in the game at what time. But there is such a stark difference between the depth that the Eagles had in the secondary for their championship run last season and what we have looking down the barrel at us as we get ready for week 1 in 2025. As of right now, we have no idea who's going to start at cornerback 2. And we don't know who's going to start at strong safety either. Just going to throw that in there. Sidney Brown seemed to be leading the pack at the beginning of training camp. But now we have rookie Andrew Makuba challenging him for starting snaps as well. After this pick 6 he had against Cleveland, he also had a fumble recovery. He's played well in the preseason. There's also this wild card that we've yet to address, and his name is Jacorian Bennett. The Eagles acquired him in a trade with the Las Vegas Raiders just before the first preseason game of the season against the Cincinnati Bengals. Last year, he did start 7 games at outside corner for the Raiders. Obviously, Fangio is going to make sure that he knows the playbook better before he even gets a chance to take snaps from a starter. But with the way that Jackson and Ringo have played both throughout training camp and the preseason, it's not hard to imagine that this guy is going to get an opportunity at the least to take starting snaps sooner rather than later. And I think that I'm still pretty high on the Eagles defense, especially compared to a lot of other people because of how many defensive pieces the Eagles have lost this offseason. And with that being said, I do think that in order to be as dominant as they were last year, it's really going to fall on the front seven a lot more than it is in the secondary. I think the front seven's going to have to be really, really good. Like, in order for this Eagles team to be as dominant defensively as they were last season, which is a stretch to begin with, it's going to be a lot more on the front seven to pressure the quarterback, get after it, and finish sacks. That's the biggest thing. And a good example of that is what Jonathan Gannon's defensive scheme was like in 2022 before he left for Arizona, right? That team that Jonathan Gannon was the defensive coordinator for that made it to the Super Bowl, they had 70 sacks. That's the third most by a team in NFL history. Last year's world champion defense, they had 41 sacks. I'm not saying that they will need the top 70 sacks in order to win games, because that's a stretch. I don't see them doing that. But I do think that they're probably going to need to be closer to 70 than they are to 41 in order to be as effective as they were a year ago. It's really going to be on the front seven to pressure the quarterback. Unfortunately, I think the defense is primed to take a step back. How big of a step remains to be determined. I don't think that means that they can't still be a major factor in helping the Eagles make another deep playoff run. I think the Eagles are still very much a championship contender, even with the pieces that they've lost. I trust Vic Fangio to make the right calls, and I trust Howie Roseman to make a move if it starts to hurt us in the regular season. Doesn't mean I'm not still worried about what the secondary may look like at the beginning of this season. There are my main takeaways for the Eagles preseason. Now, let's talk Phillies baseball. Big announcement by the Phillies yesterday as they gave a health update on Zach Wheeler and his blood clot. The team announced that the blood clot has been removed via surgery, but that Wheeler has been diagnosed with venous thoracic outlet syndrome and will undergo thoracic outlet decompression surgery in the coming weeks. His projected recovery timeline is 6 to 8 months. Obviously, this means that everything was exactly as bad as we feared it was. All of everything that we speculated was true. Zach Wheeler is, in fact, out for the rest of the 2025 season and, more importantly, the playoffs. Obviously, this sucks. Nobody is happy about this. But like I said on the last episode, we wish Zach Wheeler a safe, smooth, and successful recovery from this. This is a married man with kids. This is one of the best pitchers I've ever seen wear a Phillies uniform. If you're in Philadelphia and a Phillies fan and you're not behind number 45 while he goes through this potentially life-altering event, shame on you. You're not a real Phillies fan. But let's talk about the implications of this injury. What does this mean for the Phillies' chances at a deep playoff run? I'm going to be honest, I think this is a huge blow to the Phillies' chances at a deep playoff run. Wheeler is arguably the best big game pitcher in all of baseball, okay? Not having him for the playoffs could be detrimental to the Phillies. And I know the Phillies have a lot of options when it comes to starting pitchers. I'm not naive to that. But are we seriously going to act like having Christopher Sanchez go game one of a playoff series is the same thing as having Zach Wheeler on the bump for game one? Like, Wheeler's one of the best 5 pitchers in baseball, like pretty comfortably. I love Sanchi. This is not a knock on Christopher Sanchez. I think he's been phenomenal this season. But to act like he's the same thing and can set the tone in a playoff series the same way that Zach Wheeler can, that we know Zach Wheeler can, I think is pretty ridiculous to suggest, and that's unsettling to me as a Phillies fan that's approaching the last month of the regular season in October, and I think it should be unsettling to you. I think you're a little delusional if it's not unsettling to you to lose your best pitcher this close to October. And now the Phillies will be without both Zach Wheeler, their best starting pitcher, and one of their top 2 relief pitchers, Jose Alvarado, for all of October. Alvarado got suspended for PEDs for 80 games during the regular season, but any PED suspension means that you are ineligible for the October roster. So the Phillies offense is going to need to be able to keep up with the potential shortcomings of a pitching staff that is going to be missing 2 of its top arms in the most important stretch of the season. When the Phillies offense has needed to do that in each of the past 2 seasons, they've failed, and they failed miserably. So I think it's pretty funny that people are trying to just watch that out of their memories and be like, oh no, like, I don't think this affects the Phillies' playoff chances at all. Really? Look at what happened the past 2 years when the offense needed to make up for the shortcomings of a pitching staff. Look at what happened. Lost to Arizona in 7 games, lost to New York in 4. I mean, that's simple. I don't know how you could feel better about the team's chances at doing that this time around without Zach Wheeler if you saw what they did with Zach Wheeler. I think it's a little ridiculous to suggest. I'm not saying it's over for the Phillies in 2025. There is still a chance. But things just got significantly harder, and they were already really hard with Wheeler in the lineup. It seems like no one wants to acknowledge that because of how the team is currently playing, and I get that. And I hope they prove me wrong, but all this does is shake my confidence about the Phillies even more as we hit the home stretch of the 2025 season. And I'm going to wrap up the show today by looking way past any potential Phillies playoff run to the offseason. The 2025 offseason is going to be a big one when it comes to determining what the future of the Philadelphia Phillies looks like. The golden goose of the free agent class, Kyle Schwarber, has been the most talked about because of the career best season he is currently in the midst of. But there are a few other big names the Phillies will have to consider re-signing or letting walk. Ranger Suarez is a free agent after this season. He is currently 9-6 with a 3.25 earned run average and 119 innings pitched. He is represented by Scott Boras, which means they will be looking for the highest annual average value contract that they can get their hands on. We all know how I feel about paying Kyle Schwarber, right? If it were up to me, I would put a blank check in front of him and call it a day. But paying Schwarber and Suarez what they are both going to be getting offered on the market is going to be very expensive. And if you have to re-sign Schwarber, which I believe that you do, then you may not be able to re-sign Suarez. You also have to keep in mind that JT Realmuto is a free agent after this season as well. Now, there is a world where you re-sign Schwarber and Suarez and let Realmuto walk. I think the Phillies are aware that they cannot retain all 3 of these players without at least one of them taking a significant pay cut. We all know that both Schwarber and Suarez will be looking for big paydays, so unless JT is willing to take a pay cut to stay in Philly, he is most likely the odd man out. JT has been having this resurgent season in 2025. He's hitting .280 with 10 home runs and 44 RBIs, and that might not sound like much, but he has been the second best hitter in baseball since the start of July. He's hitting .346 with 11 doubles and 4 home runs in that time span. I keep seeing these people online that are saying that because of this resurgence, I think we all owe JT Realmuto an apology for the season he is having. Listen. If you want to apologize to JT Realmuto, you go right ahead. But I don't know JT Realmuto a goddamn thing. If I go to work, like this drives me insane that people actually say this and think that they like made a point. If I go to work and I underperform what I get paid for 2 years in a row, and then all of a sudden I show up on the start of the 3rd year and I start actually performing like the way I get paid, why do you, my boss or my colleague, owe me an apology? This is a guy that gets paid $23 million a season. This is the highest paid catcher in baseball for the entirety of this contract that is about to expire after this season. Highest paid catcher in baseball. This is a guy hit .234 with runners in scoring position over the past 2 years, hit .258 as a whole. $23 million for a .258 batting average. You can find that in the minor leagues. And now that he's actually having a good season, you want an apology from me? Get lost. Cut me a break. That is softer than baby formula. I don't want no part of that. I'm happy that he's finally performing the way that he gets paid to perform. But don't come crying to me for an apology. We owe JT Realmuto an apology. If you feel like you owe him an apology, go apologize. Write him a novel. Write him a letter. I don't owe JT Realmuto a goddamn thing. You owe him an apology. I think he owes me an explanation. What have you been doing over the past month and a half that you've been able to put up better numbers than you have over the past 2 years total? I understand he takes a beating back there too. I understand he's one of the better defensive catchers in baseball. But oh my God, would you cut me a break with the JT Realmuto an apology? You know what? BS. I think it's ridiculous, and I'm not going to hear about it anymore. Don't come running to me about apologies for JT Realmuto. All right? So now I got that off my chest. Let's talk about what happens if JT does leave. I've seen a few sources say that one person the Phillies could target at catcher if JT Realmuto decides to walk in free agency is a former #1 overall pick. His name is Adley Rutschman of the Baltimore Orioles. He's a free agent after the season, and the Orioles just extended rookie catcher Samuel Basallo to the tune of 8 years for $67 million. This leads me to believe that they will let Rutschman walk in free agency now that they have their catcher of the future locked up long term. Rutschman is only hitting .229 this season with 9 home runs and 29 RBIs with Baltimore, but he is still just 27 years old, and many believe that a change in scenery could finally unlock his full potential. I do think the Phillies would like to find a way to retain all 3 of these big-name free agents, but my gut tells me at least one, if not multiple of them, will end up walking for bigger paychecks this offseason. The Phillies will need to have a plan to replace their production ready when that time comes. But once again, let's not get things twisted here. There is a clear-cut, most important free agent. His name is Kyle Schwarber. You need to re-sign him, and then the rest we can figure out after that. That is our show today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in once again. What were your biggest takeaways from the Eagles preseason? Are the Phillies doomed without Zach Wheeler? Who should the Phillies re-sign this offseason? Who should they let walk? And whoever they let walk, who should they replace them with? Let me know all of that and more down in the comments. Once again, I've been Will Barbera. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Willadelphia Sports, and we will see you next time. As always, go Birds and Kabooyah!